Hi everyone, my name is Inayaili and I'm a design program manager in the design operations team at GitHub. I am Panamanian Portuguese and I grew up in Portugal and now I live in London with my family. I have been working on design operations for a few years now, even before I had a name. And it was really good when the term started being used. I realized that now I had a name to explain the list of things that I would normally do on a given week. I started as a designer and I was a designer for many years, but as years went by and my responsibilities started to change, I wasn't really a designer anymore, but also not a project manager or even a product manager. And then the term DesignOps started being used and I had this light bulb moment. Oh, that's what I do. I finally have a word or term that I can use. Today, we're going to see how DesignOps is a way for design teams to connect the dots and connect information and people inside your company and also outside your company. It's just like an API. It lets you connect endpoints and it creates a system where you can interact between different things. And hopefully it hides the complexity of the system and it only surfaces what's relevant and what's useful. And it makes these connections purposely with strategic vision. And we'll see how by being more aware of these connections and of these goals, you can be more intentional about what design ops initiatives and projects you work on and give priority to. One question that I would like you to think about throughout this talk is, are you the design ops person without knowing it, without realizing it? Obviously, this is a more valid question if there isn't an official team or official person at your company that does this. But even if there is, you may be doing design ops things without really noticing it. So what does it mean to do design ops? What things might you be doing that are design ops related? Design ops looks very different in different companies, and even in the same company at different times, it may look different. It fills in the gaps that the team has. Every team is different and needs to focus on different types of projects and different initiatives at different times. When someone asks what I do, and they might not be familiar with the term design ops, and I'm trying to simplify the definition, I may say that I do everything that needs to be done for designers to work that is not designing. Or I may say, I do everything that designers can't do or won't do. For example, let's say you don't have a way for designers to know what they should be working on next, or to know what's on their plate in an easy way, or a way for design managers to know what each of their reports is working on. And maybe that means that that is the most important gap that you should be filling right now in your team. You need to connect those dots and show this information in an easy way to parse and also in a maintainable way. DesignOps defines connections between designers and between designers and other disciplines and other parts of the business and also the design community. It's like glue. You tend not to see it, but you'd notice if it wasn't there, if things started falling apart and when people start to feel demoralized and tired. So it's not the most noticeable work. It's usually invisible and unsung, but what matters is that the system is strong. If the API is well designed, it's easy to navigate between the different parts of the system within design and also between design and other areas. You can usually divide design ops into 3 buckets or themes that overlap a little bit. You have people, process, and tools. And I'm going to give you an example to illustrate each of these themes. First, for people, the idea of designer happiness or designer growth. Hiring is a very, very common priority for design operations teams, but you can't stop at just hiring people. Once you hire folks, you want them to stay in your company for a little while. You want to keep designers happy and well looked after. Are they feeling like they're growing as designers? Is there a sense of community? Or do people work together? Or are they working in silos? Do they know what other designers are doing? Can they see the next step in their career at your company? And basically, are you preparing today's junior designers to be the next senior designers? And you might think, but aren't there people already working on this kind of stuff? For example, HR. And yes, HR would have hopefully put in place structures and processes that you'd build on top of. But HR doesn't necessarily care about the details of a designer's career ladder. HR is working with people for the benefit of the company. So you shouldn't be reinventing the wheel. In this case, HR have their own systems that you should use, but that you should build upon. In terms of process, an example is design quality. So this idea of design quality, which is very subjective, but generally it's about how do you make sure that designers are creating high quality work and great products, however you choose to define these things. Do people trust each other and have time and space to give honest and useful feedback? Do your designers feel like all they're doing is converting sketches from PMs into Figma mocks, or can they give input? Is there slack in people's schedules to explore and to share and have casual conversations? And do people know why they're working on what they're working on? All of these translates into the quality of the work that is being done. And this is just one example of process-related initiatives that you can be working on. Other things could be planning and tracking work, planning budgets, and working together with other teams, and so on. And then tooling, a good example is Figma plugins. Tools can remove repetition, remove duplicated work, remove time-consuming tasks that don't add any value. So are you identifying these opportunities to simplify the designer's workflow and to save them time? And if you are, who is building these new tools and who is maintaining them? How are you letting people know that these tools exist? How do designers know all of the tools that they have at their disposal if they need them? And also kind of related to this is who in your team is making sure that designers get access to all of the tools that they need easily. So for example, how can they get access to Figma? How can they get access to, let's say, Loom if they're making presentations and other tools that they might need? Again, it's about connecting the dots and maintaining those connections in a sustainable way. The list of things that you can do never ends. DesignOps brings a strategic vision to this list of things so that you identify what you want to do and then you implement that. So it brings strategy and implementation together. It's important to identify what will be the most impactful thing to work on right now, but also what's possible, how it fits with the team's goals. Before you think of solutions and implementation, you need to identify the problem. What is the problem? Why is it a problem? Is it impacting other teams that you work with if you leave it unsolved? Or will it be okay if you don't work on it? What is the goal? What should the world look like if you solve this problem? And then you can start thinking about maybe just adding a little bit of process, a little bit of structure. Is there something that you could document that hasn't been documented yet that would solve it? Are there any existing systems that you can connect with and build upon? One of my goals when I'm working on anything is to not be needed at the end of the process. I get bored very quickly and I like to move between projects, and I don't love to work on something for a very long time. So if I am needed for something to run smoothly, I'm not doing me and definitely not doing my team any favors. So think about removing yourself out of the equation. It's a good way to create processes that are clear to understand and that are well documented and that don't feel like a burden. And I have implemented systems that fell apart once I took 1 week or 2 weeks off. And to me, that's a clear sign that something needs to be changed if the system can't be easily maintained without one person being there. Maintainability is super important. DesignOps at GitHub, we're still building our DesignOps API. We're not at a stable stage yet. There's lots of things that we want to work on and improve, and there's things that we've tried and worked well, and also things that we tried and didn't work very well. We always try to use our GitHub tooling so that we can be closer to engineering and to the rest of the company and how they work. We are building developer tools after all, so this is really important, and it's a common thread across a lot of our initiatives. The first example of projects that I'm really happy with is our design onboarding projects. So GitHub has a feature which is called projects, which is a little bit like Kanban boards. And we've created these onboarding projects with lists of tasks and resources for your first week, your first month, and so on. So why did we want to do this? We are a global company. We are across many, many different time zones. And also people have flexible schedules. So you might start your job in Sydney and maybe your manager lives in Paris or in San Francisco. So there's always going to be quiet times, even in the first few days. And we want people to have something to do. We want them to feel like they're making progress and that they're learning about the company and about how we work. And we've had great feedback on these projects. We keep iterating on them all the time, making small tweaks as we get more feedback from new folks as they join. And this is really important to encourage feedback, make time for folks to be candid. I may send a Slack message to a designer that has joined maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I'll say, hey, can I find some time in your calendar to have a quick chat about your onboarding? I'm trying to improve it, and I would love to get ideas and thoughts from you as you've just been through it. And then during the conversation, it's really important to never get defensive. People may say things that you have tried before that maybe you don't agree with at first or that you think don't fit the company, but it's really important to just write everything down and validate these suggestions and ideas with more people and see if there's maybe something that you should change. So basically be very welcoming of feedback. Another project is our How We Work documentation, which I guess like our API docs. These live in our team's GitHub repo, and they answer questions that folks are asking all the time, and not just new team members, but existing ones. So things that might be confusing and shouldn't really be confusing. For example, what should I do when I need to take time off? Or what meetings should I be attending? When you join the company, you get added to a lot of automated groups, and you might get some automated invites in your calendar, and some things might be when it's 3 a.m. or 1 a.m. for you. And we don't want you to think that those are necessary meetings that you need to attend. So the kind of information that you shouldn't really have to go to someone to ask, especially in a globally distributed company. And if you do go to someone and ask, it might be that you ask 3 different people and you may get 3 different answers. And then you multiply this game of telephone by 10 or 20 things that you need to know about. And it just makes things really chaotic and frustrating. So these docs, like any other docs, they can start really, really small, just a short list of bullet points. And design operations makes sure that when someone doesn't know how to do something and has to ask, that is then captured and translated into a bullet point that is documented in the most likely place that people will look for it. That's also really important. We have been building and iterating our How We Work docs based on feedback and based on things changing and based on the team evolving. So we're always changing it, and it's a constant work in progress. And speaking of work in progress, there's something that hasn't worked so well, which is how we share work in progress. One of the main points of feedback from people in my team is that they want to know what other designers are working on. And we've tried a bunch of different things. We've tried just regular show and tells. We've tried shorter show and tells that we call lightning shares, where people just have 2 or 3 minutes to share something. And we've also tried a few more asynchronous things, like opening a new issue every week, where people post their links to their Figma prototypes, or they post a Loom video where they're walking through what they've done and requesting feedback, and then people comment. But it's been hard to get this right, because if we're talking about having meetings, time zones get in the way, it's really hard to schedule, and there's a lot of other meetings to attend. If we are talking about more asynchronous things, async sounds optional, and you may get other tasks that you prioritize and you end up not doing them sometimes. So the objective doesn't change, which is to increase visibility, sharing work, and increase cross-team collaboration, which is really important when working on a design system. But this highlights also a DesignOps conundrum, which is you don't want to continue a ritual that is not working just because it's in the calendar, but you can't also change things all the time. You give you need to give time to trial things and to see if they meet the objective. Maybe you started something new in an unusual week or an unusual month. So how can you create a culture where people are happy to change, but also understand that humans need a certain degree of stability in their lives? You can't just keep throwing breaking changes at them. So we've covered a lot of ground. I hope some of this resonated with you and with things that you've seen in your company and gaps that you've noticed and weren't sure how to solve or even who should solve them. I just got 2 more things that I want to share with you before we wrap up. And the first thing is that this work needs to be done, and it's being done by someone. If there's no dedicated people, a lot of it ends up being done by folks with different titles that don't have design operations in their title. Design managers tend to take up a lot of this extra work when there's a lot of more important manager work that they could be doing. Project managers also pick up a lot of the work just due to the nature of their role. And then other folks who may be passionate about certain aspects of things end up taking extra work like community related work and project management. Can you think of someone that you work with who's always happy to drive projects that tend to just seem to be adjacent to real work, or someone who's always super organized and ends up managing the project, but they're a designer or they're an engineer and it's not really part of their job to do this? Is this work being rewarded? Is it being celebrated? Is it being seen? Are these folks able to highlight these efforts during their review cycle, during their performance reviews? Or are they being penalized for wasting time on these things? And if they are, then that means that doing this is holding them back. So should they be doing other work instead that will get them promoted if that's what they want? Or is it time to start delegating things and maybe even letting things go and start showing that there might be cracks in the API that they've been trying to maintain single-handedly? And could this person be you? Are you doing this extra work? Or maybe you're like me and many other people who actually enjoys this part of the work more. Could it be time to consider a change to a more official design operations role? And finally, you shouldn't start from zero when you're working with design operations. You should be looking for things that are working well and amplify them. Maybe there's a meeting that always leaves people feeling energized at the end of it, or there's a document that people keep pointing to because it's really useful, or maybe an issue or a ticket that generated a lot of comments and a lot of healthy discussion and engagement. What was good about these things? How can you amplify that good and pave the way for more? So try something, keep iterating. Some things may not work as you've seen, but just add just enough process. If you start writing lots of new rules and process for something, it's going to be discouraging and it's going to be boring. And it's also going to make it harder for you to want to iterate it later on because you've just invested too much time on it. And there's always more stuff to do than time and people and budget. So what is important to you now? What is going to help your design managers, your designers, or the rest of the company working with design more now? DesignOps covers a lot of ground. So can you think of some small focused mini projects that would make a big difference and that would help a group of people have a happier and more productive day? Thank you.